Hi everyone, we are excited to have you here in today's fun-filled learning session at Uolo. Here is a quick look at how you can submit your work after the class. As a first step, go to live.uolo.com. You can use any browser to access this site. On this page, you will see a list of all our classes. Scroll down and you can see the Submit Your Work button. And then you will see a list of the classes that you've last attended, which could, for example, show the dance or craft or science experiment classes you've attended recently. Next, it will show you the list of children whose names are registered in this mobile number. Choose your name from this list to submit your work. For instance, if you are Satvik Kumar, choose that name. And then choose the class for which you would like to make your submission. For example, if you've attended the New Year's Masquerade Party session and you'd like to make the submission for this class, click on the Submit Your Work button below that. And then upload the photo you've taken. Choose the image from your phone and click Submit. You can scroll down and view all your past submissions and see how many of your friends or peers have liked your work. You can also see others' work and like their work to inspire your friends. If you want to showcase your work on social media, that too is very simple. Click on Share, copy the link, and post it on Instagram or Facebook or any other platform of your choice. Just a tiny reminder, your submission looks a lot better if you could click a photo in the landscape mode rather than the portrait mode. Do not forget to tag us at YOLO_app. I'm eagerly looking forward to all your submissions right after this class.
Hey there, kids. How are you doing? Welcome to today's class. Today is the second class of our universe course that we have going on. I remember talking to you about in the last class as to how we did have one particular class where we went ahead and spoke about the universe as a whole and we spoke about the facts of the universe, but we didn't really delve into, the parts of the universe, how the universe evolved, any unsolved mysteries that exist in the universe, and things like that. Now, today's class is going to be addressing all of that. In the last class, we spoke about how the universe evolved, how it came into being, and how we are here today. But in today's class, we're going to be going ahead and talking about the things that we don't know. Obviously, whenever it comes to anything in society or things around us, there's always going to be one side where we know things versus the other side where we don't know things. There are always going to be unsolved mysteries. There are always going to be mysteries, or things that we really don't know about, things that exist, but we really don't have a theory, we really don't have any logic, we really don't know why, what, when, how, and things like that. Now, with the universe, in the last class, I gave you a huge gist. I gave you a whole lot of information where I spoke to you about how the formation happened, but I also gave you the inkling that it was just a theory, it was just a concept that people came about, and it was a research that was basically done. With research, they did figure out that this is approximately how it basically happened, but obviously, when theories exist, there are always going to be unsolved parts of the theories or unsolved mysteries that also go ahead and exist. Now, today's class is going to be about that. I want to approximately discuss at least between 5 to 6 or 7 to 8 theories that basically exist, but we will do it basically depending on how extensively I want to get into each of the theories. Now, before we go ahead and get started by talking about all of the unsolved mysteries or all of the theories that we still don't know about or we don't have enough about, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the certificate program as well as a little bit about your submissions. Now, coming to your certificate program, like you all know, you're getting certificates for the work that you're going ahead and doing. You just have to make sure of two things. Firstly, make sure you're attending all of your classes. For example, this is a 4-part course. I hope you've already attended the first class and you're going ahead and attending the rest 3 classes. So automatically you will get a certificate. The second thing to go ahead and make sure of is to do all of your submissions. You would have noticed for our GK classes now, we have very fun submissions. We have submissions that are not related to necessarily drawing, painting, or things like that. It's just basically a form of skill development, right? So, I want you to go ahead and do something on those lines. Last class's submission was basically going ahead and finding an object that, looks as part of the universe. Now, today's class's submission is going to be again a little bit creative. It's going to be a little bit different. So make sure you go ahead and get a little bit creative and do your submission on time. It is a must as a teacher that I want to see you do your submission, because, then I will know whether you're improving, and improving on the lines of creativity, improving on the lines of growth when we talk about imagination or creativity. Now, as an art teacher, like you all know, I love going ahead and focusing on the skill itself. But the only way the skill develops, the only way you do better, is firstly by expanding your knowledge, which is happening through these GK classes, and going ahead and expanding your concept of creativity. So make sure you're going ahead and doing a submission as much as possible. Now, let's go ahead and talk about today's class. Now, I gave you sort of the idea or the gist of basically what we're going to be going ahead and talking about, but I want to first explain it a little bit, give you a little bit of an introduction of what this whole concept is about. Now, coming to the concept of there being unsolved mysteries, or coming to the concept of there being unknown theories, why and what is the reason why the whole thing exists, right? So let's talk a little bit about that, so that when I dive into the theories itself, you understand why we are discussing it, or what exactly we are basically focusing on. Now, I told you that, whenever there is the concept of a theory, there's always going to be an unsolved part of it, or there's going to be an unknown part of it. So, what is a theory in general? A theory is basically someone going ahead and doing a little bit of a research, someone going ahead and figuring out, studying like the things around them. So, in this case, obviously, they're studying the universe, right? So, we spoke about how there was an astrophysicist who went ahead and did all of the research about it. Now, when he went ahead and did the research, he basically had a timeline of things that basically happened, and how he basically addressed the whole thing, and then he came up with a theory. So basically, this theory is sort of like a conclusion of what all he's gone ahead and studied. But what about all of the things that he could not study? What about all of the things that he could not actually gather information on? Because he knows a lot of things that are happening, but there's obviously going to be a part or a section that is unknown to us. So let's take, for example, that there is 100% truth that exists in, society, or there's 100% truth that exists in the universe and how the universe is formed. What if, in the universe, only 10% of that information we were able to gather? So then we are basing our theory only of that 10%, right? We're only going ahead and gathering whatever we know from that 10%. But the 90% might exist, and the 90% may actually, have a different version, have a different reality, have a different concept altogether. And the only way we will know whether this happened or didn't happen is only when we know the 90%. But the fact and the reality also is we may or may not know the 100%. And hence we have the concept of unknown theories or unknown mysteries. It's basically that 90% or that unknown bit of reality that we're going to be going ahead and discussing. Now, the concept as to why we are discussing it. The concept as to why we are discussing it is basically because whenever we talk about things like science, it's not like what we know is all we know. We should always go ahead and expand further. We should always go ahead and wonder whether there's more out there. So that's why general knowledge is a little bit of knowledge that you're gaining at this point of time. But don't just stop there. Strive to go ahead and learn more. Strive to go ahead and figure out whether there is more. So maybe you someday will be that 90%, information gatherer. You're going to be the person who finds out that rest is the 90%. So, the reason why we discuss this is basically because we want to figure out whether there is more. Is there a further reality? Is there things that we don't know? So this whole concept, and the reason why we are going to be discussing this today, is basically to get you to think about, what all you can go ahead and discover. And this is not just in terms of the universe, but probably anywhere else in the world as well. There's going to be a lot of information that you could go ahead and gather up in the future. And I would love for you to go ahead and do so as well. So the first mystery that we have is basically called dark matter or the spider's web. Now, this is something that is really, really fascinating, and I hence wanted to discuss this no matter what in today's class. So in the last class, we went ahead and spoke about all of the things that exist in the universe, right? So I spoke to you about how there are stars, I spoke to you about how there are planets, I spoke to you about how there are asteroids, I spoke to you about how there were galaxies, and I spoke to you about how they were formed. I spoke to you about the timeline as to how they were formed, right? But what one thing that I didn't really discuss to you or discuss with you about was that this, part of the universe, the fact that we have stars, planets, things like that, make up only 5% of the total universe. So then if this is makes up only 5% of the total universe, then what is the rest of the universe made of? What is the rest 95% of the universe made of? So an estimate was created by, again, people working in terms of space research figured out that 25% of the universe is basically called something called dark matter. So it's basically sort of like a strange substance. For example, they don't really know what it is, we can't really see it, we can't really understand it, and pretty sure people really don't know how it came about and how it evolved over time. So with the whole theory of there being the evolution of the universe, they couldn't really figure out where it came from, firstly. Second of all, when it comes to different planets, of different stars and different things, they're able to figure out, the mass of it. They're able to figure out what it's formed of, right? We spoke about it in the last class. But with dark matter, they're not able to figure out what it is made up of, why we can't see it, what basically happens with it, and things like that. So it's basically something that's very confusing to people as to, what there is out there with that 25%. Now, another things that scientists basically have gone ahead and figured out over time, again, this is basically on their research that they've gone ahead and figured out, is that dark matter is something called the spider's web. So this is basically just an idea they've gone ahead and given up. So the idea that they've given basically is like it's a form of a spider's web wherein it's kind of holding all the galaxies together. So if you know the concept of gravity, you would realize that gravity in today basically holds us to the ground, right? So whatever, if you drop something, it'll fall down. So that's the whole concept of gravity. So what they basically say that, the dark matter actually acts as this kind of gravitational force that kind of holds galaxies together. So basically what happens is, when there are galaxies, all around, they're not kind of dispersing out, they're not kind of just spreading all over the space, or they're not kind of, disintegrating into different, parts of in the universe, because this dark matter is kind of just holding all of this into place. So based on the research that they've done, they're only able to figure out that this 25% does this. Further than this, they haven't really figured it out, and hopefully one day they figure out, what dark matter is made of, where it came from, how it basically exists, how it's going to influence us in our life later on in the future, and things of that sort. So there's obviously a lot of research that is going ahead and happening, but it's a real puzzle that basically exists with society. People are not really able to figure out, and it's one of the biggest unsolved mysteries that exist. Now, the second thing, which is a biggest unsolved mystery, is basically about if in the universe out there, out of the 100%, 5% is basically stars and planets and things like that, and 25% is basically dark matter, then what is the rest 70%? So if we add those two up, we have 30%. And then out of the 30%, we've kind of differentiated what they are. But what about the rest 70%? Now, obviously, with time, and with research, they have figured out that there exists a lot out there that we don't know. And obviously, we are such a small speck from the universe. We aren't really such a huge dominating part of the universe. So there does exist a whole 70%, but nobody really knows what it is. So people actually called it something called the dark energy. And they say that it's really, really powerful, but they really don't know to what extent, and they really don't know how it can go ahead and change time. So in this, the thing is, there's not actually a lot to discuss. It's just a simple like a fact that exists in today's day and age, that there is something out there that exists with the 70%, and we really don't know. Now, scientists obviously do understand that the universe is ever expanding. The universe is expanding at a very, very, very fast rate. And they do believe that the dark energy is the one or the culprit why this is happening. But again, as to why, how, when, what is going to happen, what is going to be the result of it is again not known by any scientists. These are again just theories that people have come up with. And this is the theory that they've come up with, that, they call it dark energy. But again, there's not enough proof, there's not enough enough evidence that basically what exists out there. So that is basically the second fact that I have for you, or the second unknown mystery about what exists out there. What is the 70% that exists out there? So the next basic, unsolved mystery that exists, or the unsolved question, basically, I would say exists, is basically if there is dark matter or if there is a dark energy, does that mean that there is something called antimatter or anti-energy? Now, what do I basically mean by this? This term might seem a little confusing, and obviously, if you have gone ahead and read a lot, you would know about this. But at this age, I do not expect you to know so much. So I'm going to explain it to you. So matter basically is that there is something. So let's say that we have a scale right here, and this is basically going to be matter. Now, in the same manner, we have up, we have down, we have side, we have, on the other side. So always, if there is an up, there's always going to be a down. If there's always going to be a left, there's always going to be a right. If there's always going to be a sun, then there's always, sun and daylight. Then we always have night, which is like, dark. So in the same manner, what they believe, if there's something that exists, that is matter that exists, dark matter that exists, then does that mean there's something called antimatter? Now, a lot of the times, what happens whenever we discuss about the universe or what we have seen around us, you will notice that there's always something that, when we talk about this correlation, they're always opposites. So when we're talking about day is all bright and light and things like that, versus night is always the opposite, which is the dark. So in the same manner, when there is matter and there's antimatter, they're going to be complete opposites of each other. Now, we all do know that matter is what has gone ahead and created where we are living, right? So what I mean by matter is the gases. When I talk about, the helium, the hydrogen, the nitrogen, the metals, the air, all of that, the trees, everything that we are today is basically matter. So if all of this matter exists, then probably there is an antimatter out there as well. And what happens if an antimatter basically exists? People are kind of baffled about it. They want to really figure out, if there is an antimatter or not. Because what the theory basically says when it comes to antimatter, or the evil twin as they call it, is that if there is matter and there is antimatter and then they collide, then the whole part that basically exists, both of them disappear. So this would be sort of like the reverse Big Bang theory, they kind of call it, wherein, how the Big Bang theory existed from matter expanding, and, the whole theory came about and we all came into existence. If the matter that is all of us, the universe, and an antimatter kind of collide, then the whole thing will disappear again. So it'll be kind of like the reverse Big Bang theory, wherein the whole, world, the whole, concept of there being planets and things like that will again go back to being nothing. So people want to really figure out whether something like this exists or not. And again, it's just a theory that exists over time. It's sort of like an unsolved mystery, because, what they have researched on and what they've figured out over time is basically that the universe kind of exists in this manner. So maybe it exists in this manner as well. All right. So the next, kind of unsolved mystery that I have for you is basically in relation to black holes. Now, black holes are, what are black holes? Firstly, so black holes are basically kind of gravitational pulls, or they're basically regions of space that exist, that kind of suck everything into it. Now, the unsolved mystery, or the unsolved concept of the black hole basically is that, where it came from. Firstly, like, where did the concept of the black hole come from? Second is, where did it get such a big force to pull everything into it? So the thing of the concept of how much it pulls into it is very, very great and very, very vast. So black holes can go ahead and pull, even suns, planets, whole galaxies into it. So, how does it have such a strong pull factor? That's the second question that they have. And the third question when it comes to black hole is that when things are sucked into the black hole, where do they go? So, because if you go through a black hole, where do people go, or what happens to it? Now, obviously, with research to figure out what happens through a black hole, people have to kind of go through. I don't think people have actually been able to figure out, like, where things basically go into a black hole. So these are the basically three pertinent questions when it comes to the black hole itself, like, where it came from, where does it have such a strong pull from, and finally, what happens when, things go into the black hole. Now, the last and final unsolved mystery mystery or the unsolved question that I have is basically related to the space roll or the silent scream. Now, in space, if you go ahead and scream, will anybody be able to hear you? Is biggest question. So, if you actually go into space, because space is basically a vacuum. So, when people go onto the moon or people go ahead and are exploring space, when you go ahead and talk or when you go ahead and scream, you can't really hear the other person. So, what they basically wonder or what they basically go ahead and question is, then how do radioactive, waves, or how do different kinds of telephone waves or things like that basically travel? Because even our voice is some form of a wave, right? It's basically some form of frequency. So if we are going ahead and talking, people are not able to hear us. But how is it that these radioactive waves or things like that are basically traveling in the universe, firstly? And second is, there are like loud noises that basically come from, the cosmos or come from the universe. There are a lot of the times when you can hear like big bursts and things like that basically going ahead and traveling and basically moving around. So how is it that we are able to hear that, but we are not able to talk and they are not able to hear us? So, what is basically the concept of, noise when it comes to the universe? How is it that, it basically happens? The last and final question that I have for you, and this I'm going to leave actually for you to go ahead and think about, is the concept of how do you think the universe will basically go ahead and end? So this is, the biggest question that people have. So obviously we have something called the Big Bang, wherein the universe was formed. So how is the universe ever going to end? Is there an end to the universe? Is there a start to the universe? People have come up with the theory of there's a start to the universe. So in that manner, is there an end to the universe as well? So this is a question I'm going to leave for you. Do you really think that there's going to be ever an end to the universe, or is it that it starts and never dies? So that's going to be part of your submission for today. It's just going to be something that I want you to go ahead and think about. Now, apart from that, what do you have to go ahead and do as part of your submission? Now, as part of your submission, I want you to go ahead and take any of these unsolved mysteries that you have and a little bit think about it. So you can go ahead and come up with a theory as to answer any of the theories you have. It doesn't have to be factual, it doesn't have to be right. I just want you to go ahead and think about, what could be the answer to any of the unsolved mysteries that I have. So even when it came to the last question that I have about, will the universe end? A simple yes or no answer also would basically work. So I would like for you to go ahead and explain this in a very creative manner. Whatever you think, whatever you can basically come up with. So you can go ahead and write it down on a sheet of paper and sort of take a picture and upload it, or you can go ahead and draw a version out of what you think. For example, when I spoke about antimatter versus matter, you can go ahead and draw sort of like the collision of it, or probably you can go ahead and draw the black hole, or you can go ahead and write about it. So whatever you feel, whatever interests you, you can go ahead and do it in that manner in order to kind of get the answer of any of the unsolved mysteries that we have as part of the universe. Now, before we end today's class, I want to talk to you about two things. Firstly is the certificate program. Like you all know, you're getting certificates for the work that you're going ahead and doing. Make sure you're going ahead and attending all of the classes of a particular course and doing all of your submissions on time. Secondly, that I always talk to you about is, when it comes to your submissions, are you going ahead and doing it on time? Are you going ahead and focusing on improvement? Are you going ahead and focusing on the concept of growth? I hope you really, really are. So please make sure you're going ahead and doing so. Please make sure you're going ahead and doing your submission, because it's going to be building on yourself. It's going to be building on your skills. So make sure of that. Till then, bye-bye. I hope you go ahead and do your submission for this class. I will see you in the next class, where we'll go ahead and talk about the different aspects or the parts of the universe that exist. Till then, bye-bye, and have a look at the submission video.
Hi everyone, we are excited to have you here in today's fun-filled learning session at Uolo. Here is a quick look at how you can submit your work after the class. As a first step, go to live.uolo.com. You can use any browser to access this site. On this page, you will see a list of all our classes. Scroll down and you can see the Submit Your Work button. And then you will see a list of the classes that you've last attended, which could, for example, show the dance or craft or science experiment classes you've attended recently. Next, It will show you the list of children whose names are registered in this mobile number. Choose your name from this list to submit your work. For instance, if you are Satvik Kumar, choose that name. And then choose the class for which you would like to make your submission. For example, if you've attended the New Year's Masquerade Party session and you'd like to make the submission for this class, click on the Submit Your Work button below that. And then upload the photo you've taken. Choose the image from your phone and click Submit. You can scroll down and view all your past submissions and see how many of your friends or peers have liked your work. You can also see others' work and like their work to inspire your friends. If you want to showcase your work on social media, that too is very simple. Click on Share, copy the link, and post it on Instagram or Facebook or any other platform of your choice. Just a tiny reminder, your submission looks a lot better if you could click a photo in the landscape mode rather than the portrait mode. Do not forget to tag us at Uolo_app. I'm eagerly looking forward to all your submissions.